"How are the new recruits doing, Cutter?" The big man was standing in Security Chief Ridley's office, watching the cameras and making note of the blind spots. Cutter had been a Marine in the sandbox long enough to cut most situations to the bone with a single observation. He hadn't been your average jarhead, one of those gung-ho rifle-toters who usually got wasted by an IED or random bouts of gunfire from insurgents. No, Cutter was one of those guys with enough black ink on his file to make you lift your eyebrow. Brave Marker, a company that did not exist as far as anyone was concerned, was one of those units that came in with extreme prejudice and left bodies and destruction behind. Cutter couldn't tell you his body count before joining this little organization, but it had been double digits that were creeping closer to that fabled triple digit every time they gassed up the chopper. This post had helped him get there, but it also allowed him to practice his special brand of violence on people who could probably clip him from reality with nothing but a thought. Scare them young, and they would never step up to you again, just like cats did to puppies. Not so new anymore. You'll have some solid additions to the snatch team, probably some minders too. I hear that little bitch we picked up near Massachusetts is probably going to graduate. A couple of others are testing really well too, so we might be able to graduate a couple of them from this class. Ridley still had his back to the man, staring at the monitors as he watched his charges move about the compound. There were a few less. The 20 had become 18, but that was to be expected. Chandra had been the first, but the death of the blue band named Jax had been a bit of a surprise. The red bands sometimes killed each other in combat practice. The green bands often burned out due to mental strain, but the blue bands were often where you got most of your graduates and your washouts. Jax hadn't died in some accident. He hadn't been killed by a vindictive classmate, and it had actually been something far more commonplace. Jax had made no secret about the fact that he liked Choco Buddies, a candy bar they stocked in the vending machine. Apparently, the ones he ate at home had never been anything but chocolate and nougat, but the last batch they had gotten was a new kind, with peanuts instead of nougat. Jax hadn't been paying attention when he went for his mid-afternoon snack, and he had died of anaphylactic shock before anyone realized what had happened. That had been unfortunate, but 2 deaths in 6 months wasn't so bad. Sometimes the deaths reminded them that they were mortal, and that despite their powers, they could be killed, even by something as mundane as peanuts. "I see you getting close to Dex. Do you believe he'll work for us?" Cutter thought about it, his hands making a rough noise as they sawed across his 5 o'clock shadow, and nodded. "I think he will. Dex likes to help, and helping is something the Snatchers often like to pretend make their pursuits noble. Takes them a little longer to get jaded and run down if they think it's for the greater good. Hammershoal keeps going on and on about one of those blue bands too, the one that sees stuff. You might want to set him aside for later. He's been solving cold cases better than unsolved mysteries ever could." Cutter laughed at his own joke, but Ridley only watched the cameras on his eternal vigil. "Not really for me to say," Ridley finally said. "More for the others to speculate when the time comes." "The bigwigs," Cutter replied, and Ridley nodded. "They never save many. Last year they spared none, and I think the most I've ever seen them spare was 2. Ridley shrugged, his bony shoulders coming up from behind the wings of the chair. "They have their ways." The 2 he was talking about had been a couple of white bands that had been able to manipulate the output of whatever they were close to. The power had played hell while they were here, and the kitchen cooks often reported the food they had made coming out in double portions. The 2 students, twin girls, hadn't been tested at finals and had been allowed to go to the world unburnt. They now stayed at a government facility within a nuclear plant, the output of which helped cut the government's bottom line when it came to energy costs. Before that, Ridley couldn't even think of who it had been before that. The twins had been 10 years ago, and no one had been spared after them. 18 is fine for midterm, Cutter, but we need to cut the fat after midterms are over. I want no more than 10 when finals come around. Cutter rasped his facial hair again. I don't think that'll be too difficult. We're about to start combat training in the red band class, and that usually weeds out a few. Green bands generally start burning out about now, if their mental acumen ain't strong. It's the blue bands, I figure, we'll have trouble thinning. There's a couple in there I wish we could keep. The tracker would be hell on wheels for snatching. Ridley turned around, and Cutter stepped back under the weight of that glare. Don't overreach, Cutter. These children are not tools. You know why they're here, and you know what they're meant for. Don't get greedy or stupid. The moment we start keeping them, the moment we stop burning them out and start making a private army, the federal government will burn us to the ground. Cutter nodded. I was just talking, he said, turning to go. Don't pretend it ain't something you've never thought about. Ridley turned back to the monitors, and Cutter left. He had considered it. He had thought about it long and often, but it would ultimately amount to nothing. The federal government would never allow it. But Ridley was pretty sure that if he set his mind to it, he could build a small army of powerful people, and the government would never be the wiser. The problem was the reason that he had taken the children in the first place. They were here to fulfill a purpose. They were his sacrifice and his life's work, and he needed that to continue if the world was to continue. If there was a God, Ridley thought he would understand. If there was a God, Ridley meant to ask him why he had done this in the first place, before he undoubtedly condemned him to hell. Janice was trying to stay cool, but her eyes were constantly roving over the kids in the cafeteria. Ridley had been keeping her too busy to return to base, but as she got some lunch, she realized that 6 months had passed since she was last here. She wondered if he was still alive, her hands shaking as she made her salad, and figured he must be, or she would have heard about it. She had heard about the girl who had had the hemorrhage and the boy who had the peanut allergy, but those had been the only 2 reported deaths. That was rare. She remembered classes that had ripped each other to shreds. Her own class had been halved by midterm, and only the blue bands like her had been spared. By the time finals came around, she had been one of 5 students left, and 4 of them had been blue bands. But that's what happens when your red bands start a coup and have to be put down. She shivered when she heard him, and it took every fiber of her being not to turn around and look at him. He was alive. She watched him in the mirror from behind the bar and saw him and his friends walking to a table near the wall. He was popular, it seemed. Most of the class was sitting with them, and they were all talking animatedly about their classes. A few others were sitting here and there, but Dunstan seemed to be part of the largest of the friend circles. Suddenly, she wanted to talk to him so badly. She wanted to ask him about his day, to see how his studies were going, to tell him how much he looked like her, to tousle his hair, and to tell him how proud of him she was. His smile could have been on any one of her baby pictures. His hair was the same light brown as hers, and she was glad that he hadn't gotten anything from his father, whoever that had been. Then, suddenly, he felt her looking at him and glanced her way. His smile slipped a bit, his eyes revealing a lack of recognition, and she turned away and took her tray to the teacher's area. He hadn't known her. Of course he hadn't. He had never met her. He didn't know who she was. She had never been there for him until he was abducted and dragged to this place. He wouldn't want to know her. And who could blame him? "Jan," someone called, and she looked up to see Wheeler was sitting at a table by himself. She smiled, some of her joy returning. She hadn't seen Wheeler in 5 months, and this sudden appearance was a balm to her wound. She put her salad down across from him, sniffing at the huge burger that he was working his way through. "Better be careful, stud. Those things will catch up with you." Wheeler shrugged. "I'd rather die from a burger than the errant blast of one of these damn kids." Janice nodded, taking a bite as she mulled it over. "What brings you back to the site?" she said, through a mouthful of lettuce. They wanted me to help with the midterms for the red bands. I don't know what, but they get what they want." They chewed, each of them trying to find something to say. "Your observation go well?" she asked, grasping at straws. "Pretty well," he said, wiping his mouth. "We found a few kids the site was interested in, and I don't think they'll be too hard to snatch. You?" Janice nodded. "About the same. One of them is definitely going to be a problem. I haven't seen a pyrokinetic in a while. This one is definitely powerful." Wheeler nodded, slowly. "How was Trask?" he asked, referring to her partner on the mission. "Not a good match. He honestly just sat around and listened to college football on his phone. He wasn't into anything I was reading. He didn't like to talk, and it was very dull." Wheeler nodded again. "Jezzy never shut the hell up. It was just chatter, chatter, chatter. She never wanted to talk about anything besides what she was into. It was a pain." Janice made a sound as she ran her fork through her salad. "I heard she's a popular partner. Supposed to be amazing in bed, they say." Wheeler snorted. "What, you jealous?" "Maybe," Janice hedged. Wheeler laughed. "I never touched her, don't worry. She wanted to, but I've been kinda hung up on someone from work," he said, looking up at her leadingly. Janice sighed, reaching slowly across to squeeze his fingers. "That's too bad. I happen to be a little hung up on a sweet guy from work too, but office romances are pretty frowned upon." He squeezed her fingers back before pulling his hand away. "Well, maybe we'll get paired together again so we can spend some time trying to get over our office flings." Janice smiled, her salad mostly forgotten. "I like that." Dr. Hammarskjöld winced as the door was slammed shut and looked up to find Cutter looming against the door to his office. "I've asked you to knock," the little doctor said, looking back at his computer. "Ridley says he wants to cut the class in half before finals." Hammarskjöld looked up, his eyebrows sliding together. "What?" "Yeah, he wants to go down to 10 before finals. Better get your tight 5 ready, because I think this will be the year I have a red band class with more than a 1 at the end." Hammarskjöld made a noise in his throat. "I'll talk to him. If we can get all 18 to graduation, more the better. Why does he—" "Obviously, he wants to breed competition. He doesn't want to graduate 18, little man. He wants to graduate the best. That's what he'll get. We both know the green bands will begin to drop off as they always do. That little girl will probably be fine, but the others, they'll probably start dropping like flies." Hammarskjöld shook his head. "The glee you take in the death of children is truly chilling." Cutter laughed. "Why not? Are they not brought here for a special purpose? Why not let them fulfill it as intended? He left then, thankfully, and Hammershoal rubbed at the bridge of his nose. Midterms were going to be brutal this year. He could already tell. Cutter was standing on the stage with the little doctor and the teacher from the green band class when they came in to get their food the next day. He was smiling and greeting them, and Dax raised a hand at him, which he returned. He turned back to see Masha scowling at him, but she wouldn't say why. "What do you reckon they're about?" Dunstan asked, as they sat down with their trays. "Nothing good," Gerald said, as he went on eating. "Probably just announcing midterms," Rebecca said, and when they all looked at her questioningly, she rolled her eyes. "It's not like it's a secret. Mrs. Lloyd has been talking about it for weeks now. We'll be taking our midterm soon, so they can tell us how we've improved." "Makes sense," Gerald said. "They need to test us, and the tests should reflect our aptitude. They'll probably have Dunstan identifying things, me following paths, Masha trying to break into people's minds, and Dex..." He stopped as if unsure what Dex and Ryan did, but the two of them shared a look. "Fighting," both of them said, before going back to their breakfast. "Really?" Rebecca said. "You think so?" Dex shrugged. "It makes sense. They haven't been teaching us all that fancy hand-to-hand and battle tactics with our powers, so we can run obstacle courses. Nah, it's gotta be pitched combat. That's the only thing that makes sense." The Red Bands had been hard at it for the last few weeks, and the development in the Red Band group was noticeable. Most of them had been bulky when they arrived, but all 5 of the Red Bands were covered in muscle now. They had all looked like football players, most of them, but now even Ryan, who had been the smallest, looked like a bodybuilder. They were on double portions, and their classes were always something that resembled gym, all day, every day. Ryan and Dex slept like the dead at night, and they woke up ravenous. "Good morning, students," Cutter said, and the general chatter quieted. "And welcome to the start of midterms." There were scattered applause, though most of them were probably too tired to realize what was being said. "This week, we will be assessing your skills and determining what you know and what you might still need to learn. If you are to be the best you can be for your country, then we need you in fighting form. So learn all you can and do your best to be your best." There were more applause, and as Cutter left the stage, Dex noticed Dunstan looking around expectantly. He'd been doing that for the last couple of days, like he was trying to find someone, and as he sat back and looked unappetizingly at his plate, he must have felt Dex looking at him. "What?" Dunstan said, putting a hand to his nose. "Do I have a booger?" "Nah, it's just, you seem like you're trying to find somebody, and you can't quite do it. I was just wondering if you'd found a girlfriend or something." Dunstan snorted. "Yeah, 'cause this place makes me feel real romantical. No, it's, He stopped, moving in close as Jenny, Masha, and Britt put their heads together and talked quietly. "I saw a lady here the other day that I didn't recognize." "Yeah," Dex said. "I noticed there was an uptick in staff lately. I guess it's because of midterms." "Right, but I feel like I know her somehow. I've never met her, but she's familiar." Dex raised an eyebrow. "I'm not sure I get it." Dunstan scrunched his face up, trying to find the words. It's like sometimes I know people without knowing them, you know? Like I see them and I touch stuff and I feel like I know them because the people who had the items know them, but I don't actually know them. I don't know. I'm not making a lot of sense." No, I get it," Dex said. "It's like you have someone else's memories, and they aren't yours, so they don't feel quite right. Like a shirt that's too big or maybe too small. Exactly, Dunstan said, snapping his fingers. You get it. You boys keeping secrets over there? Rebecca said, Gerald smiling as he watched them in his quiet way. No more than usual, Dunstan said, leaning in as he told her about the lady that he had seen. Rebecca listened, and Dex thought that she might have her own familiar face here. He had seen the way that she looked at the little doctor, who sometimes stumped around here. Rebecca was a nice person, but Dex would have been afraid for her to look at him like that. That was a strangling look, if ever there was one. The weird part is, Gerald said, slurping the last of his eggs up, I feel like she might be my mom or something. I feel kind of fuzzy when I think about her, like I did for the girl at the group home. She was kind of like Wendy in the Peter Pan books. 5 parts caretaker and 2 parts mother and 3 parts unobtainable love. We all had a crush on her, but we also feared her rages too. This is sort of like that, but not quite, I guess. I'm guessing that's not how you feel about that little doctor guy, though, Dex said, and Rebecca looked like she had swallowed a lemon. The bell rang, and they all got up as they went to dump their trays. Dex hung close, waiting for her answer, and Dunstan wasn't far behind him. His curiosity had been piqued as well, and she finally sighed as she saw they weren't going to leave it alone. No, not at all. In fact, the feeling I get is pretty unfuzzy. Dr. Hammershoal is the reason that I'm here in the first place. He tricked me into revealing my dreams, something I thought was just part of my anxiety, and this place picked up my trail because of it. I hate him, and I get the feeling that he knows that. Dex wasn't so sure about that, but he kept it to himself. He was pretty sure that most of them had been on the radar of this place since birth, if not before. This place looked like the kind of government facility that might have slipped something extra into your mother's vitamins at the OB/GYN so they could keep up with their little operation. This place had likely been operating since before the Cold War, maybe even since before Hitler started yelling about change in Germany, and they would be here long after the United States was dust. Government programs and cockroaches, those were the 2 things that survived the nukes. Not surprising, Dunstan said. He's always so polite when we have lessons together. I don't enjoy the things he makes me see, but he usually helps me forget them. Rebecca had been moving away, but she stopped and turned back. How does he make you forget? Dunstan scratched his head, a dreamy look coming over his face. I can't quite remember. It's some kind of rhyme or something. Once you reach 10, we may begin. Once you reach 9, you'll enter a relaxed state of mind, Rebecca said, shuddering a little despite her slack and easy posture. The 2 of them looked like they were out of it, and Dex shook them as their dreamy reactions took on a slow spiral. Both of them stuttered and looked around, not seeming sure where they were for a minute. Rebecca looked embarrassed. Dunstan just looked confused. And when she excused herself to go to class, Dex told Dunstan to keep an eye on her. She's likely to be in a bit of a state after that. Gotcha, Dunstan said, and after a fist bump, the 2 parted ways. Dex waved at Masha as she and her friends met Heather at the door to the Green Band Hall, and she waved back at him. She mouthed good luck at him as the 5 of them headed to class, and Dex looked around for Ryan as he went. The kid was usually close by, but when he saw him near the Red Band hallway, he let out a hiss of displeasure. He had clearly been waiting for Dex, and Dick and his little cadre had found him. As Dex approached, he heard the bigger boy giving him the business. Physical trials tomorrow, Runt. You think you're ready to take me on? Guess you'll just have to find out, won't you? Ryan said, bristling at the boy who was about 1.5 heads taller than him. Dick laughed. As if I'd squash you like a bug. You aren't even in my weight class, squirt. I guess it'd be a mercy, though. Might as well get you out of the running before you bring shame on the whole... But he stopped talking when Dex put a hand on his shoulder. But I am in your weight class, Dick. So why don't you save the shit talk for the mat? Dick turned around, stepping out of Dex's grip before balling his fists up at his sides. Why don't you let the runt fight his own battles, Dexter? If he deserves to be in the program, then he shouldn't have a problem towing it up with the big dogs. Dex rolled his eyes. I'm tempted to let him do it, too, but I don't think Cutter would approve of finding you splattered all over the corridor. Dick sneered. You think you're so funny, don't you, Dexter? Not especially, Dex said, but I know if you keep pushing Ryan, he's going to show you that size ain't everything. Dick shook his head and stormed off, his posse following close behind him. Dexter wasn't sure how he would ever survive the dirty looks thrown his way by Dick's underlings, but he'd manage somehow. You okay, Ryan? He asked the younger boy. Ryan nodded. Yeah. What took you so long? Got held up, Dex said. You ready for midterms? Ryan shrugged. Can you be ready for midterms when you don't know what the class is? Dex laughed. True. I've never done school for very long, but I assume it's a little different from this. Definitely, Ryan said as they walked into the gym. Generally, the bullies who try to kill you in regular school don't have superpowers. They took their spots on the mat as Cutter walked in from the locker room in his usual PT gear. His warm smile was still in place. Dick was standing amidst his flunkies, grinning at the pair of them as they came over to join them. All right, Red Bands, Cutter said as they huddled close. I'm sure you're all terribly worried about midterms, but don't sweat it. It's going to be physical trials for the most part, capped off by one-on-one combat. This is not a pass-or-fail thing, so don't worry. We're testing how your powers have grown, nothing else. So don't be too nervous and just do your best. Now let's start with some calisthenics and move on to the obstacle course. Come on. So, Miss Cashmere was saying, for midterms, you will be working one-on-one with me. You will be given 3 prompts, and you will have to implant them in my mind. This will be timed, 10 minutes per person, but it will not be a pass or fail. We just want to see what you can do after some training. So let's pair off and work on image implanting for today. Daniel, you can work with me. Masha and Heather paired up, Jenny and Brittany already sitting next to each other, and took turns sending images to each other. This wasn't terribly hard, especially since no one had tried to infiltrate her mind during class since Chandra had her little accident. Masha had to be careful, though. She had given a few of the girls headaches when she had sent, and as she sent Heather a warm summer beach, she saw the girl shake her head and shiver a little. A trickle of blood slipped from her nose, and Masha realized that she had sent too much. Easy, Masha, she said, wiping at her dribbling nose. My brain will be coming out next. Sorry, Masha said. Sometimes I forget my own strength. Heather blew her nose and settled herself, and the two continued. What happens when it does that? Masha asked curiously. What, when you send too much? Yeah, Masha said. She had never experienced it herself, but she was curious to know what it was like. So many of them sent like they were speaking through a string on a tin can, but Masha felt like she had a megaphone in her head most days. It's like when you wake up in the middle of the night and the signal on the TV has gone out, and all of a sudden you're just staring at all that static. You're half awake, so you don't know what's happening, but the static and the hissing noise just seem to envelop everything. It's like that, except in my head, I guess. Masha nodded, thinking about it as Heather pushed an image of a tranquil wood into her head. What she was describing was overload, Masha supposed, and it was like a blown circuit. Masha wondered if she could do more than just stun people like this, the way Dex did with his powers. Maybe, if she kept pushing that current, she could blow their circuits out, like she had done with Chandra. She hadn't really intended to do it, but she wasn't sorry that she had. Chandra had been trying to kill her after all, and it had been survival of the fittest. Masha hadn't wanted to die. "It's a tranquil forest," Masha said, and Heather nodded. "I'm not as good as you are, but I hope I'm getting better." Considering some of Heather's earlier images had looked like the graphics on her dad's N64, this one was outstanding. It was a little grainy, a little unreal, but it was fine. She had the general idea down, and that was what was important. At the end of the day, they just had to send, and then get better before the finals. Heather closed her eyes and started sending again. Masha picturing a scene from a western that her dad had liked. Masha got the image slowly. The mesas and gullies coming into view, then the sun and the clouds, and finally the scrub grass and the little trees. Masha could almost feel arid heat and sun beating down overhead, but it was all snatched away suddenly as someone fell off their chair. Masha opened her eyes and saw Brittany bending down to check on Jenny as she lay on the floor beside the table. She was thrashing a little, having a fit, as Masha's grandmother would have said, and as Brittany panicked, Mrs. Cashmere came over to help. "Nothing to worry about, children. As your powers become more powerful or your sending becomes more competent, this can happen. The brain is like a muscle. It must be worked out, or cramps and strains can occur." Mrs. Cashmere was holding her gently, stopping her from hurting herself as Jenny thrashed slightly. After a few minutes, Jenny shook herself and sat up. She told Miss Cashmere that she had a whopper of a headache, and the teacher got her some aspirin and told Brittany to let Jenny send for a bit before trying to send back. The class fell back into its usual back and forth, and Masha went back to her exercises with Heather. They had to be ready for midterms after all, and practice made perfect. "Okay, Dunstan, take it slow and tell me what you see." Dunstan reached for the shoe, but his hand shook a little. The little sneaker looked like someone had pulled it out of a waterlogged ditch, and it looked like it might fit a toddler. Dunstan had seen a lot of terrible things in the time he'd been here, and he wasn't sure he wanted to add any more to the long list of things that lived rent-free in his head. It was weird, though. He couldn't remember a lot of them, just how they had made him feel at the time. They'd made him feel small and hopeless, but the doctor had taken that away from him, and he was glad. They had haunted his dreams when he reached for them, but now he felt half full. It was like something was missing. It was harder to define. It reminded him of poking his tongue into a hole where a tooth had been. He knew there had been a tooth there once, but now it was gone, and maybe he sometimes wondered where that tooth had went to and why it had left at all. "Dunstan, are you okay?" Dunstan nodded. "Just a little scared. I never know what I'm going to see, but it's rarely nice." "Life is rarely nice, Dunstan. Best to get those thoughts out of the way right up front. The world is unkind to people like us, Dunstan, so we have to help where we can. Let's continue. We have to make sure you're ready for midterms tomorrow." Dunstan sighed, putting 2 fingers on the shoe as he let the waves of memory flood over him. He's 2. God, he's barely out of diapers. He's playing by the creek. His father is fishing not far away. The creek is deep. It's up to the dad's knees, and he's a big fella. The kid sees a frog. He goes after it, and he chases it a ways. "You can You can hear the reel clicking, and the kid knows his da has a big catch on the line. He chases the frog down the stream. It's a big one, too, and he's running along the edge, and Dunstan shuddered, goose flesh prickling on his arm. He fell in. God, he was gone in a second. He bobbed up just long enough to get a breath, and then he was back under again. He came up again. The stream took him quick, though. I don't even think his father knew he was gone. He was dead. He was dead before he could take a third breath. He never surfaced again. He drowned, and he tried to yell for his mother as he... Dunstan took his hand off the shoe and wiped his eyes as he tried to forget the way the kid had wanted his mother to save him. Dunstan had never had a mother, never had anyone really to look after him. He had Mary, he supposed, but she wasn't his mom. She would find someone else to worry about. Had probably found someone else already. And that was the difference. Somewhere there was a mother who was hoping against hope that the owner of that little shoe would come back someday. Dunstan was going to ruin those hopes. I hate it sometimes. I hate what I am. The little hand patted his. We all serve as we must. I know it brings sadness, but you bring closure to those who may not have it otherwise. You've helped people, Dunstan. Don't doubt that. Dunstan tried to smile, but he just couldn't do it. There's something I want you to do for me, Dr. Hammarskjöld said. It's not part of the curriculum, you understand, but I was wondering if you could do me this small favor. It would bring me some comfort, if nothing else. Dunstan looked down at the thing in his hand and had to swallow the sawdust in his throat. It was a pen, a fancy pen, and it reminded him of the one he'd owned once upon a time. Whose is it? Dunstan asked. I'd prefer not to say, the little man said, looking far away, and I would prefer if you didn't talk to people about it either. Just tell me what you see. Don't hold anything back. Dunstan took a deep breath and reached for the pen. He saw the girl as she took her first step. She walked shakily, the woman in front of her smiling as she spread her arms out to catch her. She was laughing as she walked, the woman crying as she called her name again and again. The girl was waving next, walking into kindergarten as her mother cried again and left. He saw her as she rose through school, like a shooting star. She had friends. She excelled. She was loved, and she loved others. She graduated high school, went to college, opened her own psychiatry practice. She never knew her father, something she always wished that she had, but something that her mother would never give her. Someone had gotten this pen on his request, and Dunstan believed he knew why. It's your daughter, Dunstan said, his breath coming in slow gasps. Yes, Dr. Hammarskjöld said, after a few seconds. A fling from college, who kindled. She was my first and only love, but I knew better than to have children they could use against me. How is she? Please, tell me what you saw. Dunstan spent some time telling him about the life of a daughter he would never see, and who would be safer for never knowing him. Rebecca came into the little room when her number was called. She didn't like it. This was where the little doctor took the kids he worked with, and she didn't want to work with him. She hated him, and if he came into the room, she couldn't exactly be trusted not to put her hands on him. Rebecca, take a seat, said a woman over the loudspeaker. It wasn't Dr. Hammarskjöld, it was the woman who helped their teacher sometimes. Rebecca took a seat on the doctor's table in the middle of the room and got ready for whatever was expected of her. Lay down and get comfortable. Today's exercise is going to test your dream-telling ability. We want a good reading, so please tell us everything you see while under. Can you do that? Yes, Rebecca said. Dreaming for her wasn't much like it was for other people. Other people rarely remembered what they dreamed, but Rebecca remembered them all. She had to. That was her gift. It was her curse. Just lay back and relax, get comfortable, and be at ease. Rebecca lay down and tried to quiet her mind, but it was difficult to get comfortable when commanded to. Ditto for sleeping. She was expectant and nervous. What if she couldn't do it? What if all this was in vain? What if, once you reach 10, you may begin? Her skin went cold. It was him. He was here, and he was attempting to use his power on her. Despite herself, she was getting sleepy. She felt a yawn coming on, and even knowing what he was doing wouldn't save her from it. She knew what was going on, but despite the yawn building, she repeated the next part to him out of reflex. Once you reach 9, you'll enter a relaxed state of mind, she whispered, but still, he must have heard. Once you reach 8, you'll be feeling great, his voice intoned, and Rebecca felt her eyes grow heavy. She wanted to talk about how unfair this was and about how this wasn't right, but instead, she read the next part from memory. Once you reach 7, you'll be floating in heaven. Rebecca fought against it, but she knew it was in vain. Her eyes were getting heavy, and her words, his words, were flowing out without her command. She was entering that receptive state that the doctor had always placed her in, and she was worried that this time she might not come back. Who was to say what might happen this time? Would he kill her? Surely not. She was a government asset now. But who was to say that she wouldn't wake up looking as goofy and rattled as Dunstan did almost every day? She knew what Dr. Hammarskjöld was doing to him. It was the same thing that he had done to her. He made him forget, but it was what he was forgetting that she wasn't sure about. Once you reach 6, there are no conflicts, he crooned, waiting for her to go on. No, she moaned, shaking her head. No, you can't make me. Once you reach 6, there are no conflicts, he said slowly and dreamily this time, really worming his way in. Rebecca tried to fight him, but she just wasn't strong enough. Once you reach 5, your problems take a dive. The words burst out like she'd been holding her breath, and the return cadence sounded relieved. Once you reach 4, it's time to snore. Rebecca felt it coming on strong. The yawn that slipped out made her sick. Once you reach 3, you'll find your reprieve. She wanted to fight, but God, she was so tired, so exhausted. Once you reach 2, it's all up to you. She was drifting already, and those last words followed her down into sleep. Once you get to 1, it's over and done. She was floating in that black void as she waited for what dreams might come. Rebecca, can you hear me, sweetie? It was Mrs. Lloyd now, and that was fine. It would only be a nightmare if the little doctor had tried to speak to her. Yes, Rebecca said, her voice echoing in her head. "What do you see?" "Nothing yet. It's just darkness." "Is there anything? Anything at all that you can tell us about?" "There's something. It's just... wait. It's starting to appear. I'm in the kindergarten. I'm floating above it like I sometimes do in my dreams. I can see kids walking around, but they're walking very slowly. I can see them like they're moving underwater. They don't seem happy. They seem scared or upset, like people at a funeral." "Good, good. What else do you see?" "There are 2 coffins in the cafeteria. One is big and one is small. There are people sitting in the cafeteria. There are people sitting in the cafeteria. They're looking at the coffins. There's 2 people in the cafeteria that have something on them." "Something? Can you be more specific, dear?" "I think it's blood. One of them is Ryan. His forehead is covered in blood, and so are his hands. The other one... oh, God. It's Masha. Not Masha. She's just a little girl. No, not Masha. She wouldn't do it. She wouldn't mean to." "Describe it to us," Mrs. Lloyd was saying, but Rebecca couldn't. She was screaming and flailing, her breath hitching in and out like she was having an asthma attack. Rebecca felt like she was dying, and then she felt sure of it as the voice of the little doctor fell over her again. "Rebecca, it's okay. Breathe in and out. Breathe in and out. Heart rate slow. Anxiety fall. Nerves unclench. Back to base." Rebecca suddenly felt like a knot that's come undone in a rope. Her whole body was unbound. Her nerves and anxiety seemed to return to normal. It was like someone had rebooted her. Rebecca lay back as the peace flooded through her. But even then, there was that quiet voice that whispered that she'd not calmed herself. This was his doing, and she shouldn't go so quietly into it. She was drifting off into quiet sleep now, but still that voice harangued her. She would fight harder next time, Rebecca promised. Next time. "Well, that was close," Miss Lloyd said, expelling a mouthful of cigarette smoke as she did. Dr. Hammarskjöld wrinkled his nose at the smell. "I wish you wouldn't do that in close quarters." Miss Lloyd shrugged. "When else am I supposed to smoke? These personal sessions today are eating into my smoke breaks. What happened there at Hammarskjöld? Is she actually seeing the future, or is she just making it up? The sight wouldn't have snatched her if she was faking, and her brain activity certainly reads as if she's seeing something. I think she's developing some kind of projecting ability, too. Nighttime indicators have brought back readings of her sending in her sleep. I think she's traveling while she's sleeping." Mrs. Lloyd coughed on a lungful of smoke at that. Is that safe? She might stumble across things best left unseen if she goes snooping. Dr. Hammarskjöld doubted it, but it was a definite concern. I think it's still too soon for her to know what she's doing, but it will need watching. The security chief isn't going to like it, Miss Lloyd said, as she fished out another tar-more and lit the end. "When does he ever?" Dr. Hammarskjöld asked, and Miss Lloyd only nodded. "Sorry to make you wait. It's a red-letter day for the blue band class." Gerald was following at a respectful distance behind Dr. Hammarskjöld as he led him to the new test. "This one is one of my most devious tests yet. It will be a true test of your power, and I hope it will give us an adequate measure of it." He hadn't noticed that Gerald had stopped yet. He just kept walking and blabbering as Gerald stared at the door. It was unassuming enough, just a door like any other, but when he glanced down, a strange thing happened. Underneath the door, like a pair of roots from a tree, were a pair of strings. There was a blue one and a black one, and they had never sat so closely together. The black string was death. It always had been. But the blue string was his GPS. It led him through life like a magic fairy, and it had never failed to keep him safe. Now it appeared to be leading him to death, and that was confusing. It had never done that before, not once, and it had never occurred to Gerald that death might be the destination of his life. Gerald had never honestly thought of the final destination for his life, but he supposed he would die one day. There were worse things than dying, after all. He lived with people who did not seem to value his life, people who would be happy to take it from him. And surely living like that was worse. This was confusing as well, though. "Something the matter?" Dr. Hammarskjöld asked. "What's beyond that door?" "Bluebeard's 7 other wives," Dr. Hammarskjöld intoned. And when Gerald looked at him like he was crazy, the little doctor giggled. "Administrative hallway boy. Nothing else." Gerald reached a trembling hand out for the handle, but Dr. Hammarskjöld gently covered it with his and pulled it back. "Best not to. The security chief would be angry if a student went down there. Come, come. We have things to do before midterms tomorrow." They headed for whatever the little doctor had set up, but Gerald cast another look over his shoulder as they walked away. There was something important behind that door, and Gerald meant to find out what. They sat in the cafeteria after lessons that day, all of them too tired to go on. Masha massaged her temples. Dex and Ryan leaned back in their chairs like they might drop, and even Gerald had nothing smart to say that evening. They were all worn out, and there'd be no time spent in the game room tonight. If today was hard, then tomorrow would be even worse. "I can't imagine what more we could do tomorrow that we didn't do today," Dex said. "I can't imagine," Ryan said listlessly, and he moved his food around his plate. "At least yours is just physical. I'd kill to run an obstacle course after a day of nothing but forming images in my mind." Dunstan wanted to say something, wanted to add to the discussion, but he couldn't honestly remember what he had done that day. It was strange, like someone had scrubbed the chalkboard after a busy class and left nothing but dust. He knew he had helped Dr. Hammarskjöld with something, but he couldn't remember what it was. He noticed Rebecca looking at him oddly and glanced away as he took another bite of mac and cheese. "So, if there's no grades, then what is all this for?" Heather said, looking at the mashed potato mountain that she had formed. "Maybe it depends on what department you get when you graduate," Daniel said. "If you graduate," Masha said. "Sounds like most people don't graduate. Most of the people who work here seem to have, what's the word, washed out?" Dexter laughed. "Where'd you hear that, little sis?" I don't remember. It was just something I picked up from somewhere. It's true, though, right? I think I remember Dr. Hammarskjöld using it once, before he stopped talking abruptly. Maybe we just see the ones who couldn't make it, though. Besides the little doctor, most of the people don't seem particularly well adjusted, Gerald said dreamily. Dex wanted to say something in defense of Cutter, but he had to admit they were right. Cutter was a competent trainer, but he usually reminded Dex more of the people who trained you for cage fighting than the people who probably trained you to work for the FBI or the military. If they weren't going to be working for the government, then who? It didn't make much sense to train them for no reason, but Dex supposed that there had to be a reason. There was always a purpose, an outcome, for people like this. There was always a cost that had to be justified. Well, all I know is that I'm going to sleep like the dead tonight, Dunstan said, getting up and picking up his plate. I think we should all get some rest. Most of you look done in. You don't look so good yourself, Dexter said. You look pretty peaky, my boy. I guess I feel a little peaky, Dunstan said, as he walked to the garbage can to throw away his scraps. You don't talk as much about the awful stuff you see anymore, Dex said as he got up to join him. I'm here for you if you need to talk about that. Don't just bottle it up, man. Nah, I'm fine, Dunstan said. It hardly makes an impression anymore. Really? 'Cause some of the stuff you were talking about was pretty grim. Yeah, but I found a way to cope, Dunstan said, his smile not quite as sane as he flashed it. I'm doing okay. Don't worry about me, Dex. Dex wasn't so sure, but what else could he do? All right, then. Well, get some rest done. Tomorrow's going to be more fun and games, I think. The two smacked hands, and then Dunstan was heading for the bathroom. He'd gotten a little queasy feeling in his guts, a random image of a kid's severed hand being thrown into a hole, and he wasn't sure he was going to be able to keep his dinner down. The memories of what he had seen weren't gone. Not really. The things he had seen were simply hidden behind a hazy glass that obscured them for a time. They would be back, and always, it seemed, at the worst possible time. He made it to the bathroom before the vomiting started, but it was a near thing. The food looked only slightly less appetizing as it swam in the bowl than it had on the plate, and he sent it down as he wiped his mouth on the back of his hand. They couldn't know how much pain he was in, how much turmoil, and they never would. It couldn't go on forever, but Dunstan would if he needed to. You okay? He looked up as Rebecca spoke and nearly splashed his shirt with water instead of his face. The bathroom was empty, but he still hadn't expected a girl to follow him in here. She was leaning against the wall as if she came here often, and Dunstan suddenly wondered how much time she spent in the men's room. Yeah, my dinner didn't sit well. Sorry if I worried you guys. I think it was less about what you ate and more about what you saw, wasn't it? Dunstan did feel the water slide down his shirt this time as he missed his face, sitting up sputtering as he wiped at his eyes. What? You see things, despite Dr. Hammarskjöld helping you forget. Isn't that right? How do you know about that? I have my own demons that the little doctor used to help me with. I know his work, and I know it doesn't last. What does he take from you? All the horrible things he makes you see? All the horrible things that have been done to those people? Dunstan wanted to deny it, but instead, he nodded. He does. He makes it manageable. He shouldn't have to, Rebecca said, half whispering. None of us should have to go through this. But we do, Dunstan said harshly, and there isn't anything we can do about it. He wiped his face and threw away the paper towel, a little harder than he strictly meant to. Why do you hate him so much? Truly, why? He doesn't hate you. He asks about you all the time. Why do you hate him?" "Why? Because he's the reason I'm here. He brought me here. He told them about me. If it weren't for him, I'd be at home with my mother and father." "Maybe, but it's more likely that they already knew who you were. He helped you get here, but they would have had you in the end anyway." Rebecca didn't seem to have an answer for that. This is your life now, no matter what he did. Maybe it's time to just be okay with that. He left her there to contemplate that as he headed for the showers and then to bed, along with the other tired and weary students. She traveled again that night, though she didn't know she was doing it. She slid from the dormitory like a ghost, moving through the halls and familiar spaces. She saw Daniel in the media room, nursing a can of Sprite as he tried to stop shaking. He saw Cutter sitting with two of the snatchers in the cafeteria as they drank whiskey from small glasses. She saw a woman in the library that she did not know, but who wept ceaselessly over some book. They all had these lines over their heads, these angry lines that seemed to squirm over each other. It reminded her of cartoons when someone was angry, and she began to recognize them for what they were. She flowed through the kindergarten, moving where she would and seeing what she might see. She went into the classrooms, now empty, into the gym, into the green band room that she had never seen. She was looking for the places that the teachers went, the secret halls where the teachers watched and this mysterious security chief stayed. That was where she encountered something odd. It wasn't odd in the general sense. It was only a door. But it was odd to the new eyes that she possessed. To her new eyes, it bore the stink lines of something most foul. It was like a living embodiment of filth, and she did not want to touch it. She didn't want to know what lay beyond that door, but she needed to. She went through the door and found not another metal hallway like so many of the others, but an earthen chute that led into the ground. It was strange. She hadn't seen real dirt since arriving here, but this place was nothing but a cave amidst surgical steel. She looked down the chute, not wanting to go down there, but knowing that she must. There was something important down there. There was something terrible down there. There was something down there she needed to see, and the truth would tear her apart. She went down into the earth, and at the bottom, she saw what awaited her. It was a serpent of pure darkness, a storm cloud of smoke and chaos. It rose up as she came into its lair, its voice that of a badly tuned instrument as it gives its dying breath to the audience. It was huge, taking up most of the space, and she heard the bones as it rolled towards her. She was smoke, unsubstantial, and she knew that it couldn't hurt her. She knew this, but it didn't bring her any comfort. As it rose to the ceiling and prepared to fall on her, she screamed and threw her hands up to protect herself. She awoke screaming in her bed an hour and a half before breakfast, and her cries were the alarm that woke everyone for midterms. Her friends tried to comfort her, and the teachers offered to get a medic, but Rebecca finally stilled herself as she came fully awake. She looked at Dunstan and Gerald, and the two of them seemed to know that something important had passed here. She collected herself and went to breakfast. It was just a dream, she told herself. Dreams couldn't hurt you. Dreams couldn't get you. Dreams were just dreams. There was no reason to worry anyone because she was just having pre-exam jitters. It would all be over by the end of the day, one way or another. The conversation around the breakfast table was less than lively. It looked like no one had slept well. Everyone was worried about the upcoming midterms, and now that what they had feared was before them, it appeared their appetites were failing as well. They all had plates stacked high with bacon and eggs and other food that might give them the energy to make it through the trials today. But now it appeared that all of them were left pushing the slop around listlessly. Their eyes kept jumping to the clock, none of them really wanting to hear the tone that would bring them to their fate. "Well," Dex said, as he pushed his tray away, "good luck, everybody. I hope you don't need it. I hope these damn midterms are just overblown, like most of the tests the adults tell us to prepare for." "If this is how we feel before midterms," Dunstan said, "I wonder what the finals are going to be like." Some of them laughed, but most of them just sat silently. Rebecca was trying to convince herself that it had just been a dream, but she was failing horribly. It was hard to convince herself that what she had seen was just a figment of her imagination. This was real life. Things like that only happened in movies or TV shows. Her mind was at odds with itself as she tried to convince it that there had been no monster in the tunnel beneath the schools, but an equally as insidious voice instructed her that it had all been real, and she should be very afraid. "Are you okay, Rebecca?" Masha asked, and the girl jumped a little as she looked around. "Sure, why wouldn't I be? You just look a little off, not quite yourself." Masha didn't want to say that she was picking up some of what Rebecca was feeling. She got the feeling that people didn't much like that. It made them feel like they were being spied on. She could catch glimpses of a monster or a big bug or something, and she wondered if this had been the subject of Rebecca's dream. She couldn't blame her for waking up screaming if she had dreamed something like that. She probably would have woke up too. It seemed to go deeper than that, though. Rebecca was afraid of something else, some hidden knowledge that she didn't want to share just yet, and Masha supposed that she could tell them when the time was right. Gerald didn't say anything. He ate his breakfast and took another sidelong glance at his friend. There was a similar duality going on with her, as had happened with the door. And now Rebecca had both a red and a blue string attached to her. It was odd that this should happen within a few days of each other, but he knew it to be significant in some way. When the bell rang, it almost felt like a reprieve from the table at large. "Well," Dex said, "I guess there's no putting it off any longer. Hopefully I'll see all of you at lunchtime. Hopefully you won't look like you've just gone 10 rounds with Rocky either," Dunstan said, and that got a genuine laugh out of all of them. They all headed off to whatever fate had in store for them, unaware that each would be changed in a different way when they returned. "All right, huddle up, red bands." Cutter called them in after some stretches, and his grin was absolutely predatory. "I'm sure you've all wondered what the midterms will consist of. Well, wonder no more, kids. Today's midterm will be pitched combat. This will not be pass or fail. It's simply a test of how your powers have grown. This will not be to the death," he said, eyes landing on Dick as he said it, "but death, if it occurs, will not disqualify you." Everyone made some noise to the affirmative, and Cutter seemed pleased. "So, I'm sure that some of you have noticed there aren't enough of us to pair off evenly. Well, you'll be helping the black band class with their midterm, since their only student will be sparring with us. Corsair, bring him in." Corsair, a man that Dex had only ever seen in passing, led in a fellow who he didn't think he'd ever spoken to, despite the fact that he slept 2 bunks down from him. He was unremarkable, his features completely generic, and his face was free of anything like scars or wear marks. The most outlandish thing about him was his shaved head, and he was dressed in a black uniform, similar to their red ones. He looked at them in that way kids sometimes look at thrift store toys. He looked at them like he thought they might be fun, but were something he would ultimately break. "This," Cutter said, "is Lionel. He'll be sparring with you today. Do not underestimate him, or you could be in for a very painful evening." Dick snickered, and when Cutter looked at him, there was no mirth in the older man's eyes. "Something funny, Dick?" "Well, yeah, this is a joke, right? I mean, we've been training in the gym for weeks, and this kid looks like he weighs about as much as one of my dumbbells. There's no way he's going to be able to stand toe-to-toe with us." Cutter grinned, and it did not look healthy. "Lionel might surprise you, and since you're so cocky about it, why don't you spar with him? It might teach you something that you can't find on the obstacle course or the mat." Dick laughed and cracked his knuckles. "Sure, let's see what the pipsqueak's got." Dick was taking off his sweats, so he didn't hear when Corsair spoke to the young man in the black uniform. "We're not playing for blood, Lionel. Just knock the kid out and don't hurt him." The boy nodded, but Dex was suddenly very glad he wasn't the one who had stepped up first. Lionel may look unassuming, but there was something about him. Dex didn't trust him. He'd seen kids like that on the street, the ones that would rather hurt people than survive. Lionel looked like he was going to be anything but a pushover, and Dex felt like that might be just what Dick needed to bring him down a peg or two. The two stepped onto the mat together, and Dick laughed again when Lionel bowed to him. Dick did not give him the same courtesy, and just as the kid's head came up, Dick hit him with an energy blast that sent him skittering across the mat. Lionel tumbled backwards, landing on the flat of his back, and he lay there for a moment, as if soaking it in. "Stay down, kid," Dick hissed at him. "I don't have any beef with you, but I will hurt you if you decide to keep going." When he got up, Dick was a little less jovial than he had been. Lionel brought his hands together with a loud pop, and they all jumped as a shockwave sent Dick falling backwards onto his rear. Dex was startled. The kid had used something very similar to Dick's own power set. Not only that, he'd used it better. His shockwave was a little more targeted and a lot less sloppy. Dick glowered at Cutter as he got up, confusion and anger at war with each other. "Just what the hell is this? The kid has the same power set I do? Why isn't he in this class already, then?" "Lionel doesn't have the same power that you do," Cutter corrected him. "Lionel is a black band. Black bands have quite a few powers on file, but this one is mimicry. Lionel can copy whatever powers are working around him. If we took him into the blue band room, he'd probably be able to touch things and figure out what they do, or interpret dreams, or see the future, or some shit like that. If we took him into the green band room, he'd be able to invade people's minds. He's in the red band room, so as soon as you attack him with whatever you have, he uses your meathead powers against you." Dick looked at the kid with a little more respect this time. "So the trick is to knock him out with one shot before he can get your powers. Message received." Dick ran to the left of him, Lionel following him as he spun in a slow circle. Dick shot another one of those power blasts at the kid, but Lionel was ready. He brought his hands together again, and when their powers met, it caused a shockwave that sent everybody falling to the floor. It was like being at the epicenter of a thunder crack, and Dex reached up to see if his ears were bleeding once he finally got back on his feet. It had knocked them all down, and Cutter was holding onto one of the weight racks like he wasn't feeling real steady either. Dick kept circling the kid, throwing out smaller attack waves, which Lionel countered with his own strange hand clapping. He looked like some 2-bit villain on a Saturday morning cartoon show, but Dex could tell that Dick was getting frustrated with all of this. He threw out a massive wave of energy, the sweat standing out on his forehead as he started scraping the bottom of the tank. But instead of countering it, like he had done before, Lionel ducked and let it pass over him harmlessly. In response, He brought his hands together and hit Dick in the midriff with a large bolt of power. Dick fell to the ground, writhing as he held his guts, and as the others gathered around him, they saw him pull his workout shirt up to reveal a large purple bruise. "I'm dying," Dick grunted, rolling on the ground and clutching at his bruised stomach. "You ain't dying, kid," Cutter said, helping him to his feet. "You just got an abject lesson in humility. Go to the nurse and get that checked out, but come back after she tells you it's just a bruise." Dick got to his feet, with some help, and limped off towards the common area. Dex doubted he would be back, and as Wade approached the mat, Dex wondered if he might have company in the nurse's office. The kid, Lionel, shuddered when Dick left the sparring area, and Dex supposed the black band had a range. That was probably good for him, otherwise he'd pick up so many powers just eating lunch that he'd probably go crazy. That'd be the first thing when you were teaching someone like this. If you didn't teach them how to turn it off, or at least how to muffle it, then your charge would probably burn out pretty quick. "Very well then, Wade," Cutter said. "Let's see if you can bring some glory back to the Red Band group." Wade grinned. "I think I get it," he mumbled, and his first strike came in hard and high. It was a good plan. Dick had just been a little too late to make good on it. Dex had thought that taking him out before he could use your powers was probably the best way to go, but as Wade slapped him in the head with what was probably the equivalent of a closed fist, Lionel turned and grinned back at him. Wade looked worried, but as long as he could keep ahead of him, he'd still make it out all right. Wade was no slouch, and as Lionel tossed his energy back at him, Wade kept dodging and moving. He tossed some of his own back at him, but as the leftover energy brushed past Dex and the others, it was pretty clear that Lionel had a heavier hand. Wade went down low as Lionel threw another bolt his way, and Dex could see his teeth chattering as it pushed the bridge of his nose back. "I don't know how I'm going to fight this guy," Ryan said to Dex, and he put a hand on his shoulder. "Carefully, that's how," Dex answered back. "Yeah, I'm not sure I want him scrambling my eggs if he got a hold of my juice." Dex shook his head. "I'm more worried about you hurting him, honestly." Ryan looked at him with surprise. "Me? Hurt him? I don't know if you've missed it," he said, as Wade took a direct hit to the chest, "but this guy has creamed one of our best and is making Wade work for every step. I don't think I have much of a chance here." "Not so," Dex said, nodding at Lionel as he sent another bolt of energy into the side of Wade's head. Dick was right, but he was also slow. If you can drop him with the first hit, then he can't even use your power. That being said, if you shut him down too hard, you could kill him. As Wade stumbled and then fell on the mat, Dex and Ryan stood in silence. "Good try, Wade. You did better than Dick, and that's saying something. You need the nurse?" Wade got up, stumbling like a punch-drunk fighter. Nah, I'm okay." He weaved back to the edge of the mat and dropped onto his backside. He was staring at the ceiling as Cece walked into the ring with a big grin on her face. "Have you done it before?" Ryan asked, the two of them watching Cece as she took her stance and lunged. Cece had gotten a lot better since her first week. She had been playing around with the scope of her powers and discovered a kind of switch that she could use to change the dimensions of her force. She had also gotten a hell of a lot stronger and more agile, and when she jumped over Lionel, a solid 8-foot leap into the air, even Cutter let out a whistle. She turned her jump into a flip, and as she came over the top of him, she fired her considerable power into Lionel's face, the boy having spun to meet her. Cece had begun using her force like a wall, making stopping points wherever she threw them up. She threw it up just in front of him now, and he slammed into it as he made to sprint after her. Dex winced as the kid's nose trailed blood, and he popped up and dove to the side as she threw another one in the direction that she had expected him to go. "Me? No. Well, almost once. Gang fights, Ryan. It's just the nature of the business. The weird boys had to throw down a few times, but our strangeness kind of spooked a lot of them. We don't have guns, we don't sell drugs, but we continue to thrive. A lot of them don't get it, and it makes them nervous. One of them, Traxler, decided he wanted to tangle with us. He didn't take us seriously. That much was obvious, but when he pointed a gun at Smoke, I must have snapped. I hit him hard enough to knock him unconscious. It was one of the biggest ones I'd ever done at the time. I just stood over him, ready to let fly again, but Wizard stopped me. He said it wasn't worth it, that I'd proven my power, and killing this guy would only cheapen it. We left, and the gang stopped bothering us. Sometimes it's what you're willing to do to make the difference, not who you're willing to kill. Ryan watched as Cece tripped Lionel and caught her own blast in the face when he rolled over. I don't think just wounding is going to be enough this time, Ryan said. And before Dex could respond, it was his turn. Good effort, Cece. Dexter, come show these guys how it's done. Dex patted the smaller boy on the shoulder, hoping the message would be understood, and stepped into the ring. He didn't try to knock him out in one shot. Instead, Dex lunged at the kid and socked him right in the mouth. Lionel recovered quickly, but Dex never let up. He just kept swinging, battering the kid as he walked him across the mat. One to the face, one to the chest, both shoulders, and then he swept the legs. He meant to pin him, to force a surrender, but Lionel rolled and got out of the way. The kid was tough, Dex could see that, and he began to wonder if this was a fight he could win. The kid had taken a beating, several beatings, and he wasn't even out of breath. He didn't even look tired, Dex thought, and when he swung at him again, Lionel caught it. Now, it seemed, it was Dex's turn. Lionel wasn't just tough. He was strong, too. Dex put his arms up to block the blows, but he felt them. What had this kid been doing for the last month? Dex had been in his fair share of scrapes, but this was like going 12 rounds with a real boxer. Dex was patient, though, and when the openings came, he took them. He hit the kid hard enough to hear his nose break, but when Lionel brought his head back around, his nose was still intact. Dex was panting by then, and when Lionel knocked him down, he didn't get back up. Cutter came to stand over him, shaking his head a little. What did we learn today, Dexter? Dunno, Dex said, coughing. Seems like I just learned how to get my ass kicked. Why didn't you use your powers? Dex sat up, rubbing his chin. 'Cause he would have stole them. I figured he'd be a pushover without them, so I just started beating on him. You didn't tell me that he could regenerate wounds, though. Cutter's grin was fiendish. Corsair over there is a washout, just like most of the instructors here. When he was here, his ability was regeneration. He may be burnt out, but he can still pass it to Lionel through touch. It's a little unfair, I'll admit, but it makes you brats work for it. Guess I failed, Dex said, getting to his feet and letting Cutter provide him a shoulder. Why? Cutter asked. Dex shrugged, wincing as his left shoulder ground a little. I hadn't used my powers, and I didn't overcome the situation. If he hadn't had that regenerative power, you would have creamed him. Also, your assessment was correct. If you don't give Lionel the ammo, then he can't fire the gun. What you didn't know is that they've been training Lionel for a month now, in a similar way that we have the rest of you, with one exception. As Ryan stepped hesitantly into the ring, Dex saw Lionel grin and bring his fists together. Corsair knows that Lionel has to get hit first, so he focused on endurance and pain control. Lionel is trained to take that opening hit and to send it back with all his might. Like I said, kid, you did good, but we cheated. Ryan sighed, looking at the bruised boy, and Dex almost felt the shift in his stance when he started using his power. Dex had gotten used to fighting through small waves of it when they trained, careful blasts. But what he was seeing now was no measured response. He wanted to go to Ryan and tell him not to do it. Not to do what it looked like he was going to do at least, but it was too late for that. Lionel was still smiling, but the blood trickling from his nostril was becoming a fountain. Suddenly the smile was gone, and Lionel was staggering and clutching his head. "What the hell?" Cutter asked. "What's he doing?" "Stop him, sir," Dex breathed, having trouble finding his breath. You gotta stop him, or he's gonna..." The blood was coming from his ears now, too, and as Lionel pitched forward and fell to the mat, Cutter was running out to stop Ryan before he went too far. Dex didn't think he'd be in time. His pep talk had not had the right effect, and he could see that Ryan had gone for something a little more complete. Lionel had stopped thrashing by the time Cutter got out there, but by then it was too late. Corsair was checking Lionel, shaking him, and getting nothing. He looked at Ryan, but he wasn't sure until Cutter spun the boy to face him, and it seemed to break his concentration. "I said no killing," Cutter spat. "Those were the rules. Why would you..." "He isn't dead," Ryan said, his voice sounding hollow. "But I did neutralize him. He's a vegetable now. Can't hurt anyone anymore. I scrambled him. I won." "That's not what Isn't it?" Ryan asked, and he must have pushed a little at Cutter, because the man let him go and stumbled back a little. "You wanted us to knock him out in one shot, so I did. I knocked him out forever. I won. Did I give you some good data? Did it help you figure out how strong I am? I sure hope so. I sure hope it was worth it. Lionel would say it was." Cutter looked like he wanted to slap the kid, but instead he just took another step back. "Midterms are over for red bands. The rest of the day is yours to do what you will. Get the hell out of my sight." Ryan walked past Cutter, walked past Dex, and left the gym. Dex wanted to go after him, but he felt it might be a bad time. Ryan had passed more than the midterm. He had crossed a line that Dex wasn't sure he could come back from. "All right, Rebecca. Tell us what you see." Rebecca was in the room with the doctor chair again. They had counted down from 10, and now she was laying half in and half out of a doze. The only saving grace was that she knew Hammershoal hadn't been the one to put her under. The minder, some new woman she didn't know, had hit a button, and his voice had droned out the old catechism that would send her into a receptive state. That was fine, she guessed. Less intrusive, but still terrible. Just knowing that the little doctor was capable of putting her under made her uncomfortable. But she tried to keep those feelings walled off and far away as she went about her midterm. She didn't want any distractions getting in her way. "I'm in the kindergarten," she said, her voice sounding dreamy. "It's nighttime, and I'm walking the halls." The scritch-scratch of a pencil was audible through the relay before the woman asked her to go on. "I can see Daniel in the media room. He's drinking a Sprite. His hands are shaking. He looks like he's been crying." "Are you there with him, or..." "No, I'm like a ghost. He doesn't see me, and I go on after a while." "What else do you see?" the woman asked, making notes. "There are 3 teachers in the cafeteria. One of them is Mr. Cutter, but 2 of them are people I don't know. Mr. Cutter is smoking a cigar and drinking whiskey from a bottle. It has a turkey on it. He and the other adults are talking, but I can't tell what they're saying. They laugh sometimes. I don't think all of them are teachers, though. I think some of them are the people that bring us here. There's a woman in the library, too, that's unfamiliar. She's reading something and crying. I'm not sure why." There had been a weird noise at that revelation, but the woman giving the assessment had tried to stifle it. "What else?" She sniffled a little. "What else do you see?" "The gym. It's empty, and the equipment looks spooky. The green band room, the blue band room, all of them so quiet and dark. It's strange around here at night. People exist in this quiet place, but they seem to do it carefully, like they might wake someone up. She had wanted to say something, but had thought better of it. Rebecca, the voice said, stopping as it tried to find the best way to continue. Are these things that you saw, or things that happened to you? Rebecca wasn't sure exactly what she meant. It always happens to me. It just takes a while sometimes. That's not quite what I meant, the woman asked. Is this something you think will happen, or something you saw happen? Rebecca wasn't sure. She wanted to talk about it too much. What if they got mad that she hadn't told them about her change in powers? What if they hurt her, or punished her for not telling? It was like the lamp she had broken when she was 8. Her parents had gotten more angry about the fact that she'd swept it under the end table than the breaking of the lamp. Still, this place was different. She didn't know if the rules here were the same. I don't know, Rebecca hedged. Things are funny here sometimes. I can't really say. She could. God, she could. But she didn't dare tell this woman, this stranger, about what had come next. Okay, she said. Anything else? No, Rebecca said, though it sounded much too fast even for her. No, that was it. I floated around a little more, and then I woke up. You woke up screaming, as I recall, the woman said. You were screaming because of a floating dream? It changed suddenly, Rebecca said, hoping it sounded as good to the woman as it did to her. Suddenly I was falling through the ground. I just fell and fell and fell, and then I woke up screaming. The woman made a sound, an unimpressed sound, and the scratching went on. Well, that is something. It sounds like your powers are growing, which is good. Strong powers make strong students. You can wake up now, Rebecca. The midterm is over. Rebecca jolted a little, used to being brought out of these gradually, and sat up on the table. That's it? That was all of it? The woman clicked a button and then stepped out through a small door. She was pretty, Rebecca supposed, with long brown hair and green eyes, with smile lines at the corners. She looked familiar, too, though Rebecca couldn't be sure. She was a stranger, but not really. Rebecca looked at the shape of her face, the green eyes and the joking smile, but it was something else that caught first before she could put it together. You were the one crying in the library that night, she said, unable to stop herself. The woman nodded, the motion unsure. Yep, you called it right, kiddo. I'm just here for the midterms, but this place brings back memories sometimes. You were a student here too? Rebecca asked, as she walked out of the little room with her. I was, and I can tell you that it was certainly an experience. It wasn't all good, but it helped me become what I am today, and that's something. Someone who snatches children, Rebecca wanted to say but didn't. I know that tests are scary, but don't give it too much thought, the woman said. You did fine, Rebecca. Go take a rest for the day. You've earned it. Rebecca thanked her and headed off into the kindergarten. The weight that had suddenly fallen from her made her want to go finish Eclipse before the others got out. Rebecca suddenly felt like if she got any lighter, she might float right off the ground, and she wanted a good book before she spent all day hovering near the ceiling. Another maze, Gerald said, looking up at the strange man as he stood at the beginning of the new course. It would appear so, kid. Humor me, though. This is my first time watching you run it. The man was a stranger to Gerald, one of the beefy snatchers that had probably brought a couple of his friends here. He was running the midterm, he'd made that pretty clear, and he was a lot less personable than the little doctor. He wouldn't give anything away, and Gerald had tried. It seemed Gerald would have to lead this one blind. Well, not blind. The string made it pretty clear where he was supposed to go. Just head in, kid. Don't worry.
I've been told there are fail-safes to keep you from dying."
"Well, isn't that reassuring?" Gerald mumbled, heading into whatever this was as his guide headed off to some control room somewhere. Gerald had a pretty easy time on the first couple of turns, but on the third divergence, he started hearing something. He thought it might be an animal at first, but as he began to follow the noises instead of the strings, he realized it was crying. Somebody was really wailing, and he came around the corner suddenly to find a girl in a white uniform sitting in the fetal position. She was pretty upset about something, and when Gerald called out to her, she jumped and picked up her tear-stained face. "Who are you?" she sniffed. "I'm Gerald. I'm with the Blue Band class. Who are you?" "I'm Cindy. I'm a white band class, I guess." Gerald walked a little closer, not sure what to make of her. Was this some new ploy that Hammarskjöld was trying out? What was he playing at here? Surely he didn't think Gerald was going to lose his head over a girl. Did he? Cindy was pretty, Gerald supposed. She had long red hair, freckles, piercing green eyes, and a little nose that set just above her full lip. But Gerald had never really been interested in much beyond the strings. "Do you need some help getting out of here?" Gerald asked, offering her a hand as he assumed she was part of the midterm somehow. She nodded, taking his hand and letting him help her to her feet. The second their hands touched, Gerald felt a pulse of current run through him. It wasn't some lovesick spark either. Gerald staggered a little as a galvanizing bolt shot up his arm, and his teeth chattered uncontrollably for a count of 5 as Cindy looked at him in confusion. "Are you okay? Is something wrong?" The feeling was gone just as quickly as it had struck, and Gerald was left with nothing but the memory of it. "No," he said, looking at his hand as it lay in hers. "No, I guess not. Here, let me help you out of here. I have an ability that makes this kind of thing easy. All we have to do is follow the..." But when he looked down, Gerald felt cold dread fill the place. The lightning had left in him. The strings were gone. The strings were gone. "What the hell?" Gerald whispered, and his hand slipped out of hers momentarily. As it did, the strings came back. It was weird, 1 minute gone, the next there, but the colors of them were faded as well. The red could have been orange, the orange could have been yellow, and the green and blue were suddenly harder to distinguish. "Is something wrong?" she asked, looking concerned. "Something is going on with my powers," he said, and as he glanced at her, Gerald thought of something that he should have before. "What is your ability, Cindy?" Cindy shrugged. "I don't know. Miss Gabby says I'm a dampener, but I don't know what that means. Mostly they just teach me to sit quietly. Not like I needed help with that." Gerald turned to look at the strings and saw that the colors were coming back again. Taught her to sit quietly. Maybe if she wasn't quiet, some of her dampening was lessened. "Why is that?" he asked, walking towards the green string and waiting for her to follow. If he kept a few steps ahead of her and kept her talking, then he could make it out of this. "I was raised in a very religious household," Cindy told him, almost proudly. "My dad often said that children should be seen and not heard. I had a lot of experience just sitting and thinking quiet thoughts. Sometimes..." She stopped talking and looked dreamily at the left-hand path. The left-hand path with an orange string running down it. Gerald led them right instead and prompted her to go on. Sometimes if I just sat quietly and didn't draw attention to myself, it was like they couldn't see me. I almost felt like they forgot I was there when I did that, and it kept me out of trouble. Some of my brothers and sisters had trouble being quiet, and they got whoopings a lot. I rarely ever got whoopings. Sometimes I think my parents forgot I was there at all." Blue string left, blue string right. Avoid the red string to the left, green string to the left. But as she lapsed into silence again, Gerald found the colors were hard to see.
Why do you say so? He asked, trying to keep her talking.
Well, she said,
Sounding uncomfortable, talking quite this much.
sometimes they would forget to set out a plate for me, and then Mama would smack her forehead and say she was getting so forgetful. Sometimes they would forget special days. Sometimes they would forget me at home. Once they forgot me and went to church, and I was left at home all day by myself. They returned that night, and when they saw me eating leftovers, they suddenly remembered that I existed, and they were furious at me for skipping church. They didn't want to hear about how they had left me in bed. They didn't want to hear how they had left without me. I got the worst whooping of my life and was grounded for a month. Blue, blue, green, stopped and looked between the orange and the red before choosing the orange. He put a hand out as they entered a hallway, the floor dropping out to reveal a black hole, and Gerald helped her cross as she kept talking. That had been close, and to him, both the strings had looked reddish. This was tough, tougher than it had ever been, but Gerald kept Cindy talking so he could see the way. It sounds like your family was as bad as mine. Oh no, Cindy insisted, and as her voice went up, the strings came into view like they always had. They were wonderful. Me and my siblings had each other, and we always watched out for the littler ones. We loved to sing and pray, and it was nice to have a church family around us. Daddy was just doing what he thought was right, what God said was right, and he was ignoring and beating children, Gerald said, cutting in. That's not right, no matter how you justify it. Spare the rod, spoil the child, Cindy intoned. He was bringing us up right. We knew how to act, and we knew how to behave, and that... Gerald tuned her out as they went. He was following the blue string now, their course pretty apparent, but as it shifted from orange to red, Gerald came to a crossroads. Cindy was still chattering like a squirrel, but Gerald was focused on the strings. Right or left, it made no difference. They were both fire engine red. And then Cindy, he said, and she stopped talking all at once. I need you to do me a favor. What's that? She asked, the strings fading as she got quieter. I need you to follow close behind me and run like your life depends on it. Can you do that? He had an idea, but he wouldn't know if it worked until he tried. Sure, she said, sounding nervous. When he took her hand, Gerald felt a small bolt run through him, and the strings were gone when he looked down. Now, he shouted, and the two of them took off. The hallway erupted like some kind of lethal funhouse. Fire shot from the walls, spikes came from the ground, arrows flew from the ceiling, and the kids ran through it like they were no more than noonday showers. Gerald wasn't sure it was going to work, was prepared to be killed at any moment, but as the spike went harmlessly through him, he looked back to see Cindy with her eyes closed and her mouth moving in silent prayer. Gerald almost laughed, but it would have probably broken whatever spell had been going on. It was as if they had become ghosts, the spikes and fire forgetting they existed, just as her parents had. And when they came to the end of the corridor, they didn't have a scratch on them. Gerald breathed a sigh of relief. We did it, he chuckled, hugging her close as he danced in place. We did it! I knew God would bring us through, Cindy said, hugging him back. But Gerald wasn't so sure. He was pretty sure the only person that had gotten them to the other side was a scared little girl who needed a little more faith in herself.
Masha might have just come from lunch, but her tummy was full of butterflies. She had never been so nervous in her entire life, and it all centered around this midterm. Dex had been done, but he didn't look like his midterm had gone very well. Rebecca and Gerald had talked a little bit about their own experiences, but it had been vague and not particularly helpful. Dunstan hadn't shown up at all, and no one had seen him. The other blue bands talked quietly about what might be in store, but none of them seemed to know for sure what to expect. Brain exercises, to be sure, but it was hard to say with this place. None of them had eaten very much, and when the bell rang,
They left for class amidst a flurry of quiet talk. "Can't be that much different from the test we took last year," Daniel said, looking at Jenny, Brittany, and Heather. "I guess so," said Heather. "They hyped the test up last year at school, but it all turned out to be nothing much more than a standardized test." "Yeah," piped up Jenny, looking less dour. "I bet it's nothing to worry about when you get down to it." This seemed to give them hope, but not Masha. Masha had never been tested in earnest. At her school, you didn't have tests until 3rd grade, but it was a little different in the kindergarten. In the kindergarten, it seemed like tests were whenever the adults decided they needed to test. Some of the older kids just thought this was business as usual, but not Masha. She felt like she might be about to shake off her chair as Mrs. Cashmere came in and smiled at all of them. Masha liked Mrs. Cashmere. She was always smiling and telling them to do their best, and it reminded her of her kindergarten teacher back at regular school. What had her name been? Masha tried to remember, but it kept slipping. Miss Honey, Miss Honeywell, Mrs. Hunter. Masha pushed it out again. It didn't matter. What mattered was getting through this midterm alive. "Good morning, class. Now that we've had our lunch, it's time for our midterms." As if on cue, the door opened, and 5 adults walked in. They were the ones who took the children. Masha was sure of it. They filed in like soldiers and lined up behind Mrs. Cashmere. They didn't look at anything in particular, but just stood in perfect silence as she spread her hands. "These are our helpers. You'll be sharing your powers with them. If you're a sender, then you will be sending them a pre-planned image, like a sandy beach or a forest at night. If you're a receiver, then you will be pulling an image from their mind that we have told them to think about. At the end of class, we will assess your abilities based on the progress you've made." Many of the students seemed to ease noticeably, and Mrs. Cashmere laughed at their elated faces. "What did you think midterm was going to entail? This isn't Hogwarts. No one is going to ask you to fight a dragon." That got some chuckles from the students, and as the adults, the snatchers, Masha thought, paired off with the kids, there seemed to be some kind of problem with the one assigned to Masha. The woman blinked and turned to speak quietly with the teacher. The two had a soft but heated discussion, and finally the woman took a seat. She was dark-skinned, Indian maybe, and her hair was wound into a tight braid that fell down her back. "Hello," she said, smiling warmly. "I'll be your tester today. Are you a sender or a receiver?" Masha suspected she was both, but she'd been designated as a sender, and she told her so. The woman was smiling, but Masha could see the sweat creeping down her neck. She was nervous, but Masha wasn't sure why. Masha was just a little girl. Why would this woman be scared of her? It didn't make sense, but Masha thought that she could find out. "Very well, here," she said, offering her a card. "Take one and beam the image into my head." Her hands shook as she offered them, and Masha took one from the middle and read it to herself. "A beach, just before a thunderstorm." Masha nodded, closing her eyes and beaming the thoughts into the woman's mind. The hardest part of this was not smiling as she sent and received. Masha was sending the woman exactly what she wanted, a seaside with a thunderstorm back in the background. The clouds were rolling in, the waves were crashing on the sand, and she had placed the woman on the shore as she lay on a blanket and watched it all happen. If she wanted to get fancy, Masha could even simulate raindrops on her skin when the rain came in. The sand would grit under her hand, She could hear the seagulls as they wheeled through the rough sky. But all of it was little more than an illusion. As the woman watched the waves and the clouds, Masha rifled through her memories. The woman's name was Anna. She was 28 years old, a college graduate, and she was swimming in debt. Normally, the Air Force would have covered her schooling when she got out, but she'd been dishonorably discharged because one of her commanding officers had laid on top of her a few times and then wouldn't see her again. Masha wasn't sure what that meant, but it was probably one of those things that adults did that just didn't make a lot of sense. When Anna had threatened to tell her higher-ups about the affair, he had acted first. He had told people she was trying to steal money from him. That wasn't exactly it, but it was something like that. Whatever it was, they had thrown her out of the Air Force over it. She'd been discharged and decided to go to college instead. She found it hard to get work, and her degree didn't mean much once she had. That's how she had fallen in with these people. They paid big bucks to grab kids off the sidewalk and out of their houses. She looked nice, kind of like one of the princesses in a Disney cartoon. But she wasn't. She stole kids. She hurt people. She... Stop, Anna whispered, but Masha ignored her. She kept going. She made sure to bring the rain in to distract the woman from her rifling, but she knew she could feel it. Masha had done it before, but she'd never been this deliberate. She saw that the woman was afraid of her. Many of them were, the snatchers and the minders. They believed that Chandra had been attacked by her in her sleep, and that she had given the other girl a brain aneurysm. She saw that Chandra was dead, but it hadn't been her who'd done it. Masha saw something else, but the woman's mind recoiled with the information, covering it like a mother might her baby. Masha pushed, but nothing she did could get her the information. Masha? That was Mrs. Cashmere. Masha, sweetie, what are you doing? Sandy beach, rain, 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 rain. The woman Masha was supposed to be sending to was repeating the words again and again. Masha had seen too much, and now the lady might be broken. She was going to be in trouble, but not as much trouble if she could fix it. Masha went in and tried to fix what she'd done, but it was no use. The woman's head was a mess of wires and circuits. At least, that was how it appeared to Masha. And when she tried to fix it, there was a lot of smoke and sparks. Masha pushed harder, trying to repair the damage, but it was done and over with. The harder she pushed at the woman, the worse it got. And she finally pulled back to herself as Mrs. Cashmere began trying to get her out. Masha, Masha, come back, honey. Masha opened her eyes and saw that it was worse than she suspected. The woman was rocking back and forth, humming as she did so, and there were twin trickles of blood coming from her ears. Her eyes looked far and away, and Masha suddenly thought that college debt might be the least of her worries. Beach, beach, peachy beach, beach, rain, rain, go away, come again another day, she sang as she rocked back and forth like a teeter-totter. Mrs. Cashmere gently took the prompt from Masha's hand, and the girl was surprised to see she was smiling when she looked up at her. Very good, Masha. It appears you have successfully sent the image. You have passed the midterm. Go ahead and take the day off if you want. But I... And then Masha waved her hands at the woman as if to say, look what I did. How can this be passing? Oh, it happens. You wouldn't be the first student to accidentally warp someone beyond repair. But for the finals, you will lose points for damaging your vessel. You can go ahead and leave. It's okay. Masha got shakily to her feet, but one look at her friends was enough to show her that she had done more than pass the midterm. Her friends didn't smile or give her thumbs up, and many of them seemed afraid to look at her. Masha didn't think there would be many of them at dinner, and fewer of them would join her table for breakfast. Masha may have passed the midterm, but she had failed something a lot more important. So, what did we learn today? Security Chief Ridley looked around at the assembled adults. Cutter was there, in his red uniform, along with Dr. Hammershoal, Miss Cashmere, and several other minders who had overseen today's proceedings. No one seemed to want to talk about it, but Security Chief Ridley wasn't quite as angry as he was putting on. Quite the contrary, he was excited. He had never seen a year so full of powerful students. It was interesting to see how the talent evolved over the years, and this bunch would have been a great test group for new abilities. If any of them were going to live long enough to be tested, they would have been of great scientific value to someone. Unfortunately, that wasn't the purpose of the kindergarten. Come on, don't be shy. Let's hear what you've gathered from this year's round of midterms. Seeing that no one was going to bite the bullet, Cutter decided to get it over with and stepped forward. Red bands did very well this year. All students saw marked improvement. I believe, he wet his lips as he charged forward, I believe I might have a graduation candidate this year. Ridley leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms as he looked at Cutter appraisingly. Wow, it's been a while since we've had a red band graduate. Keep me posted on this student. Which one of our little darlings is it? Ryan Coswell, the kid from Maine. He's got a real pistol in there. Let's just hope he doesn't turn it on any of us. What about the others? Well, Dexter and Dick continue to show great progress. The other two are okay, but not overly impressive. I believe the other two will wash out before finals. Wade Forger will likely go before the end of the month. The kid's getting buggy, and I can see Chelsea Kang starting to crack as well. If Ryan doesn't burn out, I suspect that he will graduate after finals. If he does, I don't think the other two will qualify. But both may make excellent snatchers or minders, especially Dexter. Ridley nodded. Thank you for your assessment, Mr. Cutter. Miss Cashmere, how are the blue bands this year? Cutter backed away, hands behind his back, and Miss Cashmere stepped forward with a swish of her skirts and a knowing smile. The blue band class is thriving. All of our students managed to complete the midterm, though there was an incident involving Miss Sanderson. An incident? Miss Lloyd said suddenly. I heard that little creature scrambled someone's brain. She was all mean-tempered smiles as the older woman looked away in embarrassment. But when Ridley looked at her, she suddenly found it prudent to be quiet. Miss Lloyd, we do not interrupt when others are talking. Please be silent until called upon. Now, Miss Cashmere, why don't you tell us about little Masha and her incident? Masha is an accomplished telepath. She both sends and receives well, and I suspect she might have other latent abilities. Do you have any data for this? Ridley asked, raising an eyebrow. Well, no, but just the fact that she can do both is quite rare. It is possible that she might have abilities seen in the green band room or even the red, given time and training. We don't have time, Mrs. Cashmere. We train them, then we graduate them. Nothing more. Will she graduate? The woman, who always looked a lot like someone's grandmother to the security chief, nodded with assurance. Oh yes, she'll graduate. She shows no sign of burnout. She only grows stronger day by day. Keep an eye on her, Mrs. Cashmere. If she gets too powerful, she'll be transferred to one of the special classes. I hear we have an opening, he said, looking at Cutter without much amusement. Cutter scuffed his foot, never liking the man's attention or his cold eyes. Last but not least, Security Chief Ridley said, let's hear about our green bands. Miss Lloyd started to step forward, but a clearing throat from the little doctor sent her moving back into line. For a man who was barely 4 feet tall, he could command respect like a giant. He waddled forward, looking less than pleased to be here, and cleared his throat again, which always reminded Ridley of a chipmunk sneezing. Green Band class has been overrun with new students this year, and there's a lot of talent on display. Gerald Frazier is a gifted guide and properly executed the course despite the addition of Cindy Moe. Dunstan continues to show improvement, as does Rebecca Daniels, who may have discovered an ability for astral projection or clairvoyance. We aren't sure yet. Mark has also performed admirably as a tracker, and Emily, Dr. Hammershoal, Ridley said through his gritted teeth, I don't much care how much you love these children. I need to know if you have graduation candidates or not. Dr. Hammershoal blew out a breath and straightened his coat. Well, any of them would be fine candidates, but Dunstan or Gerald would be the two standouts, to me at least. However, I would like to speak with you privately about— Yes, Ridley said dismissively. I'm sure you would. Miss Gabby, what about Cindy? Miss Gabby stepped forward, covering the little doctor's retreat as he returned to the others. Cindy is powerful, but still naive. I don't know how much good she will be. Given her upbringing, she thinks this is all a gift from God or something. She will likely graduate, but I would recommend not telling her. There's a chance that she might thwart her own graduation attempt, and that could be bad. Ridley nodded, looking through the folders on the desk before dismissing them. They all left, glad to be done, but Dr. Hammershoal stuck around. He was standing as straight as he could manage, scuffing his boots occasionally as Ridley looked over the reviews. They had only lost one this midterm. Not bad at all. A midterm where they didn't lose half the class was a rare one. But it seemed like the pool might be thinning itself out before long. Surely this display of power would create some infighting, and Ridley had little doubt they would— The dwarf cleared his throat, and Ridley looked up annoyed. What is it, Nathan? I wanted to discuss the Green Band group with you, sir. Ridley smirked. Sir? When was the last time the little doctor had called him sir? He must want something pretty badly to have remembered his manners. What's to discuss, Nathan? You know why they're here, and what will become of them in the end. They will either wash out or graduate, and it's a toss-up, which is worse, in my opinion. That's why I'm trying to offer you a third option, if you'll let me. With Mark, Dunstan, and Rebecca, I could really make a difference, something this institution hasn't done in a long time. Why, with just the cases closed by Dunstan, we've— Oh, trying to form your own X-Men, are you? I had noticed your hairline was getting a little higher, but I didn't know I needed to add wheelchair access as well. Dr. Hammarskjöld didn't laugh, and Ridley let the mirth slip off his face. Let's get one thing straight, Nathan. I don't give a good goddamn what you think these kids are capable of. I couldn't care less how many cases are closed or missing persons are found. The Blacksite is here for one purpose, and one purpose only. And you know what it is, just like I do. But you know it's possible to leave these children with more than a little of their powers. You did it for me. Ridley snorted and shook his head. You are an anomaly, a freak, Nathan, and I don't claim to have any sort of knowledge, one way or another, on whether you fully washed out or not. What I do know is that if you keep talking, I'm going to have Cutter take you to the juicing room and let them strip whatever dribble of power you still have away from you. Now, if you want to keep what talent remains to you, I would suggest that you never bring it up again. Are we clear? Yes, but as for your request, it is denied. We don't use these kids for anything but graduates or washouts. They are meals, meat for the machine, Nathan. You know that. If their meat isn't tender, then they wash out. And God help them if they do. I don't have to tell you what it's like to walk amongst mortals when you've had a taste of godhood, do I? Nathan didn't say anything. He turned to go, but as Ridley went back to his work, he did toss one last thing over his shoulder. Think of the good you could be doing. Think of the merit this place could achieve if we simply let it starve. Ridley snorted, casting a barb of his own at the dwarf's back. Nathan, 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 if that thing ever gets out, even your dribble will be the sweetest nectar to him. Instead of testing me, you should thank these kids. Their graduation is what the world depends on. Without graduation, how would we keep it from sucking this world dry? Hell of a way to treat our future, Hammarskjöld whispered, but Ridley heard. Children are our future, Hammarskjöld, he said, hiking his feet up onto his desk and reaching for a folder. These kids are far more than that. They're our salvation and its sacrifice.